All right, everybody, welcome to the Dunn It All show. Hopefully everybody is doing good and everybody is doing well. This Dunn It All show is a special show. Everybody knows that this is definitely campaign season. It's election season. I know all too well about it. Too familiar with it. It can get ugly. It can get gruesome. But if anybody knows me, that they know that I'm a fair guy, and I want to make sure that we afford candidates equal opportunity to express their platform, their interests, their intentions, and how can they serve you as citizens within your respective municipalities, your county, more specifically Jefferson County, and how can they serve your families? When we get these positions, when I say we, because I'm an elected official, I am currently, those that don't know, that's tuning in for the first time, I'm a city council member for the city of Pleasant Grove, but I'm also a law enforcement officer and been doing so for the past 16 years. Law enforcement is near and dear to my heart. It's one of those things to where when you drink the Kool-Aid, you're in, and I drank the Kool-Aid. So I'm stuck in it. It's not one of those things that you can just easily jump out of. It's a commitment. And with that commitment comes a lot of sacrifice. And even when you step to the political platform, it comes with additional sacrifice. And when you run for that office, it's something serious. And I want to give a special thanks and welcome to our guest. It's going to be Jefferson County Sheriff's candidate, Mr. Jared Hudson. Hey, Jared, you on, man? How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me on, bro.
Man, listen, I'm very, very thankful for you actually coming on. You know, some people may get scared and say, I don't know if I want to go to certain shows and whatever it may be.
Man.
But it's just really about, again, being fair. I don't hide. I'm pro-police all day long.
My man.
It's just what I do. I don't make any squabbles about it, no secrets about it. But with policing, it's like anything else. You got bad apples, you got good apples. Whether you're a pastor, you know it.
Yeah.
You know, you got bad apples, good apples in the church. You got bad apples, good apples as teachers. There are bad apples and good apples in everything that we do. But for some reason, those bad apples just get magnified, and they take over the whole general picture of what the good apples are really doing. And it's hard to be a good apple because, you know, the bad apples just keep rubbing their mess on you. And anybody that's military or police, it's not what one does, it's what that individual does that affects the whole unit. What one individual does, it's the whole unit, it's the whole division, and that's everybody that suffers from that. And it's trying to change that misconception. But what I want you to do, this first thing, tell people about yourself. Who is Jared Hudson? Who are you? Where you from? And let's just start with the basics.
All right, sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on, bro. And I know you said sometimes people come on the show and not, man. I'm willing to go on any show, talk with any folks, as long as we have time. Of course, it's 2 weeks away from election, buddy, and it's full up, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so long story short, I'm from Gardendale, North Jefferson area. Went to Mortimer Jordan High School. Grew up here. When I was 18, I actually went to fire college for a few months, became a firefighter, and then felt the Lord lead me to go in the military, went in the Navy under a SEAL contract, became a SEAL. Did that for a total of, as a SEAL, for 6.5 years, and spent my last year and a half of the SEAL teams going through a medical process, had a few issues, got out, and still work for the SEAL teams now, still teach pistol, carbine, CQB, explosives, all that stuff for the teams. All branches of DOD. I do that with my private company, the Shooting Institute. And we also train law enforcement from NYPD all the way out to LA Sheriff's Office and everything in between. Done training for Birmingham, primarily CRT, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, school resource officers at the SO. So here locally, we've done that. Vice and Narcotics Unit, SWAT team, all those things. So I've been doing that for the majority of my adult career after the SEAL teams. When I left the SEAL teams, I became an Alabama law enforcement officer. I went to the academy at Northeast. You know where Northeast is? Yeah. So I went to Northeast, became a Shelby County deputy, worked full-time as a Shelby County deputy for a year, and then left to pursue business interests, I guess. I finished my business degree. I have a master's of business administration, and left just to do that full-time.
Where'd you get your degrees from? You know,
I got Phoenix University for my bachelor's.
Okay.
And that I finished that in 2014. 14.
Okay.
And then my master's actually finished in 2021, but I started that in 2017. I got it from Liberty. And I did my master's all online. So that's the benefit of the world we live in nowadays.
And that's hard, too. People don't realize it's hard.
Especially with kids, man. You know, you got kids at home.
Yes.
But yeah, I got my master's at from Liberty out of Virginia. You know, a lot of people know Liberty University. And so I got that in 2021, buddy, and it was, like you said, it was hard, man. It really put a lot of effort into it. But in the process of that, I started learning how to write federal government contracts, and that was what got me into prime contracting with the federal government, is kind of learning how to write while I was pursuing my MBA. With that being said, I've Jefferson County Reserve on the SWAT team, Vice and Narcotics Unit, from when I left Shelby County full-time on, and I'm currently a state officer. I'm an investigator for the state of Alabama. I work part-time to basically keep my APOS active, and I do a lot of human trafficking. We have a nonprofit. My wife and I started Covenant Rescue Group, and we do a human trafficking, primarily sex trafficking of kids in the state of Alabama, because as you know, in 2018, I believe it was, or 2019, they made sex trafficking of kids. That's actually a human trafficking charge. You've got human trafficking 1 and human trafficking 2. So that's primarily what I do with the 17th Judicial Task Force and with our nonprofit Covenant Rescue Group here in the state of Alabama.
Cool, man. That's awesome, man. That's a really broad background. And with that being said, as relates to background and dealing with what we're currently dealing with, people already know I've been in law enforcement for 16 years. And what it was 16 years ago and what it is now is totally different. We're dealing with some issues that are just unprecedented. I mean, we just, certain things we just did not foresee. We never expected the staffing numbers to get to what they are right now. You know, community support, you know, it kind of comes and goes. It kind of depends on what the media is playing out and things of that nature. That determines that. But never would we have thought that we would be where we're at right now. But there are a lot of different contributing factors that has led to where we're at right now. We're talking about, some people say pay. I don't say pay. And people think they make fun of me because they say, KD, you say pay, but this, you like, the pay is not a biggie. You're the one that got these other companies. Yeah, I do. I made investments early on because I didn't want to get myself caught up into really working myself to death with that uniform and being a slave to the uniform. You know what I'm saying? You can you put yourself in certain predicaments that you like, you know, I should not be doing, you know, working this extra job when I got to go into this shift and I'm tired and, you know, and they say, well, you're taking off and where's your doctor's excuse? You know, the people that don't do this, they don't know what we're talking about. But we know, you know, the sacrifices that are being made. But as far as morale and recruitment, what is your or approach on that? Because I can tell you personally now, that is not an answer that people can say that's 100% correct. That's how we do it.
Right.
Everybody's shooting in the dark.
You're exactly right. So on the recruitment end, and I say this in every show I've gone on, it's not, I don't want to disparage the current administration because meeting with Mark Moon in Blount County, we meet with Thurman down at Birmingham.
Correct.
Birmingham's numbers down. Mark Moon said, hey, we can't hardly hire. You know, it's a smaller sheriff's office in Blount County. Same thing with Gentry and Coleman County. I go and train for NYPD, you know, talking with Frankie Pinto up there. He actually did an endorsement video not long ago, but he said he just retired. But they're like, they lost 490. He texted me a day. They lost 495 officers. This is 3 or 4 months ago in a single weekend. They just dropped their papers, whether they're retiring, they're quitting, whatever it is. So there's a national narrative right now that's making it difficult to be a law enforcement officer. You already mentioned a little bit of that, right? It kind of ebbs and flows. What's the media saying? What's the community saying? Doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, right? It just is what it is. So there's a national narrative that's hurting recruitment. Now we're looking at Jefferson County Sheriff's Office as a whole. Like I said, there's a national narrative that's already hurting recruitment and retention. They had 521 full-time deputies and about 50 reserves, so 571 sworn in 2018. That's public. You can
and this is Jefferson County, right?
This is Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, the largest sheriff's office in the state, the 27th largest sheriff's office in the nation. That's out of 3,100, just under 3,100 sheriff's offices. So they're a 1% sheriff's office. They're a large office. 2018, they had 521 full-time sworn personnel and about 50 reserves. Today, at least according to the county commission, when they sent us the numbers, because you can call and request and get these numbers, they have 278 deputies. So from 2018 to today, they've lost roughly 50% of the sheriff's office, not quite 50%. When you look at that, one, there's a national narrative hurting recruitment and retention, and then two, I believe there's a leadership problem with recruitment and retention, because you know that men and women in our line of work, they follow courage, they follow action, they will follow a leader who does what they say they're going to do. And for instance, if you're working for me, let's say you were working for me and I say, hey, go do this, but you know full well that I couldn't do that or I've never done that, it's going to make you think twice about doing it. Does that make sense?
It makes me feel a certain type of way when if I'm asked to do something, that the person that's asking me to do it,
if they actually know what they're asking.
Exactly. Know what they're asking and know what position they're really putting me in as the officer. It's kind of troubling.
It is. It's troubling. And so coming from the SEAL teams, coming from a law enforcement background, albeit, a short law enforcement background, with that being said, I understand that about the men and women of our community, right? Whether it's military, law enforcement, whatever. If I'm sending somebody out and I'm saying, hey, if you get in a gunfight, this is what needs to happen, it sure helps me a lot of having a good follower to say, well, you know what? He's been in a gunfight. He knows what he's asking me to do. Or he's been in a fist fight. He knows what he's asking me to do. So, again, people don't follow titles. So I have the title of sheriff, but people don't necessarily follow it. They might say, yes, sir, because I signed their paycheck. But that's not a true following. People, especially people in our community, follow courage. They follow action. And so I would argue most of our leadership, and this is, again, nationally, I know you've seen it with 16 years in law enforcement, a lot of times our leadership, they're not that courageous person or they're not that actionable person that elicits a following. Does that make sense?
Correct.
And I think that those are the two biggest problems. One, national narrative because of media, and the one bad apple spoils the bunch sort of thing, right? Which is problematic. But two, the leadership level. That also falls on leadership too, to be able to say, no, my guys are squared away. My gals are squared away. This is what they do. Just because we have this one bad person, that doesn't reflect the entire department. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, and for leadership to effectively deal with that, because the last problem we see with leadership, and I think everything ends with, it starts and stops with leadership. We want to say the buck stops here until now it comes time for the buck to stop here, and then it's everybody pointing who shot John. And that's kind of what I think that's what we see in law enforcement nationally. I think that's what we see here. That's why I'm running for sheriff.
Awesome. One of the next questions that I have, and this is, it's just a list. When you think about, I think about everything that I've been through law enforcement wise, everything that I've seen, and I wonder. I said, man, what do people really have the heart for this position? Do they really understand what's going on? Tell me this, as far as Jefferson County, we look at the demographics, we look at the numbers, and what is your plan to be more relational to all groups? Because this is a problem, and maybe white folks may say it on the quiet end of the spectrum, and then they may be boastful on another end. Black folks may be quiet on one end, then boastful on another end. It depends on what circle they're in. That happens. You know it.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, once you are elected to whatever position, when I was sworn to be a city councilman, once I took that oath of office, when I stood, when I got commissioned as an A post officer, when I said, hey, I'm going to take this badge. I'm going to take that badge. I took this badge to serve all people.
That's right.
Black, white, Hispanic, hell, even if the KKK assembled. Guess what my job is? Protect the KKK. That's my job. It's not about what they think about me. My job would be to protect them because they're afforded the same rights as me. If they violate the law, they get arrested, just like me. I'm nobody special. I'm not above the law. As a matter of fact, people make examples out of us. The punishment is much more harsh.
That's exactly right.
For us than it is for any as it relates to law enforcement. They said the police did what? Oh, we're going to make sure we're going to make an example out of him.
Held to a higher standard.
Higher standard, But the thing is this: what's your plan in order to be the sheriff that can relate to all of these different groups? No matter the ethnicity. no matter how indigent or affluent they may be. How and what is your plan to be relational to those different groups to where you can go to 280, you can go to Mount Brook, but then you can also go to Kingston Projects.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? That's
yeah.
All those are Jefferson County residents.
That's exactly right.
So how and that's the same question I'm gonna have for Petway.
Yeah.
Like how can we be more relatable to
everybody?
Groups? Exactly. What's your approach on that?
So and I normally start off with this. I didn't because I knew we want to get in the resume. So the primary thing to know about me is I'm a Christian, and what that means. See, in political season, everybody's a Christian. You know this, right?
Yeah.
And in Jefferson County, Alabama, the biggest demographic people say we're Christians. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, what a lot of folks say we're Christians. What that means is Jesus died, rose again on the third day for my sins and yours, and it's through him we're set free.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. So that is what I believe when I say I'm a Christian. In Galatians, it says that there is not Jew nor Gentile. Now, that is ethnic background. So we could even say nowadays there's not black or white.
Mm-hmm.
There's not male or female. There's nothing except for the grace of Christ. We are one in Christ. So if you're a Christian brother or sister, which there's a lot of them out there that are different than me, they look different than me, they might even have a different political ideology than me, but we're brothers and sisters in Christ, right?
Correct.
You're black, I'm white.
Mm-hmm.
We're brothers in Christ,
mm-hmm.
right? If you know Christ like I know Christ, we're brothers in Christ. So as a Christian, I already believe that we're one in Christ. So that would be the first thing. Now, what about the people who don't believe in Christ? Well, we can still use those same principles. He says, love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two things, all the laws of Moses hinge. That's 613 Mosaic laws. Now, we got a lot more laws than that in the state of Alabama, but all the laws hinge on those two things. So how do you bridge the gap in those communities? We can, even if you don't believe that, you can use that something's more important than me. Something's more important than Jared Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
And my neighbor, you, at a minimum, are the same as me, which means I show no partiality to any portion of the community.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if the demographic's black, white, Hispanic, which if you look at it, you got about 40% black, about 50 or 52% white, and the other 10 to 8% is like Hispanic with a small mix of, Asian. That's kind of the demographics of our county. With that being said, we're all in Jefferson County together. I'm raising my kids here, you're raising your kids here, and we want to make sure that we raise our kids in a place that they can call home, they can grow up and live safely and have the same opportunities that we had, or maybe even more opportunities that we had growing up. And so how do you bridge that gap? You approach it as something's more important than me. Ultimately, I believe it's God and the person of Jesus Christ, but the county's more important to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Jared Hudson's the sheriff and now I'm, now the chief law enforcement officer of the county and you're the king. No, you work on behalf of the people. And that's the second part of this. As the sheriff, you're a constitutional officer. Constitutional officer in the state of Alabama. Article 14 of the Constitution outlines a sheriff in the executive branch of government. You're elected by the people. You work on behalf of the people versus the police chief's a code enforcement officer. They still work on behalf of the people, but they work for the bureaucrat, right?
They work for the mayor and the council.
That's exactly right. They work for the bureaucrat. The sheriff works for the people.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter where the people are, if they're on County Line Road, Alabama, where it's all a white demographic, or if they in Birmingham proper, where it's a black demographic. Doesn't matter where they are. The sheriff is there on behalf of you, the people. The sheriff's job is to serve the people, and it doesn't mean the whims of the people, because we know how that flows. Nobody's going to agree on any one or two things, but it means that I stand in the gap. I stand between the people of Jefferson County and anybody who would choose to take their right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as outlined in the Declaration of Independence. So that's your civil liberties, your constitutional rights. The sheriff is supposed to stand between a tyrant in government or a criminal on the street who would choose to victimize you and take that away. And that's why I'm running for sheriff. And I believe it's really simple. If you approach it that way, kind of like you were talking about, I'm standing on behalf of the citizens of this county, in your case, the citizens of Birmingham. I'm standing in the gap for them. That is the job of law enforcement, and that's ultimately what they're electing you to do. And then you elicit a following from the men and women of the sheriff's office to do the same thing, because they know, hey, that leader, he's got my back, I've got his back, which means the Jefferson County as a whole, they're going to have a better product. They're going to have a better product, one, because the leader of the sheriff's office is better, at least a better product from Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. Yeah. So that's kind of, I guess that's how I approach it. One, Christian values, but if you're not a Christian, that's okay. You understand that we can all why would you not want to live on those concepts where something's more important than me, and then my neighbor at a minimum is equal to me, and the job is to stand in between the people of the county, the citizens of the county, and anyone who would choose to victimize them, take their right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. The final thing with this, and I know we got to get to another question. I'm sorry to take too much time.
Good.
Right now, Jefferson County is 10% higher than the national average. This is FBI statistic. This ain't pulled out. It's like you can pull statistics from everywhere. So this is FBI statistics. 10% higher than national average in violent crime and 20% higher than national average property crime. That means our name's in the victim box.
Correct.
That is important to me because that is truly victimizing the citizens of this county. State of Alabama is not in the victim box on these crimes we're talking about. You are. The citizen is. And the job of the sheriff is to stand between whoever would put your name in that victim box and you. And that's how you do it equally across the county. It doesn't matter if you're in Mountain Brook, Birmingham, Gardendale, Pleasant Grove. It doesn't matter.
I got another question.
All right.
So at our last city council meeting in Pleasant Grove, you attended there and you had the floor and you spoke about your platform and all of that. I agree with pretty much everything you stated except one. Okay. And I want to kind of give you the chance to kind of just elaborate on it. When it comes to community policing, and this is where our definitions of it may differ. So I'm going to explain to you my side what I think community policing is. Community policing affects people different ways, depends on how you interact with police as a youth, depends on how the police has affected you as an individual, how has affected your community, you can name it. All right, the list kind of goes on and on and on. Me being an African-American officer, there's a lot of things I had to reverse within my community, because my community was historically and just statistically, it's been proven that, hey, the police did not support me. I didn't get the support. When I dial 911, the police would go to their house, the white folks' house, and they come, quicker to the black house, or the people that are more affluent can contact this person at the sheriff's office and they'll come quicker. Meanwhile, I got to dial the generic community number. To me, when I define community policing is that of when we have like a national night out. National night out means a lot to me. We couldn't do it in Pleasant Grove because of COVID had hit, and now we just finally been able to do that. But it gives the community a chance to interact with the police. If they were scared before or had a negative interaction, it's the chance, an opportunity to reverse that negative connotation and perspective that people may have, especially those that have been statistically oppressed by police. It would be mainly those that feel a certain way about a particular group, don't know anything about this group, or go off what they saw about a particular group. And we collectively as police officers have to reverse that stigma. Then me as a black officer, I have to go even harder because I'll be getting called Uncle Tom or whatever. The list just kind of go on and on and on. But when we do community policing, we interact more with the police. And we go out there and we participate in a lot of the community programs. We show up to church functions and things of that nature, mainly so we can figure out what's going on. There would be a lot of officers that came from other areas that were not familiar with Birmingham. And one of the things that I can say was a common denominator, because I was, FTO, field training officer, they would feel like people in the housing communities, they all, they like this crime, or, this is what they do. And I say, well, who was they? I said, have you had the chance to sit and talk with the people? Have you went down to Mrs. Johnson's front porch and sat with her? Because you know what those people want? They want a safe community. That's exactly right. And then when you really get to know those people, you'll find out it's the people that's outside that's causing the issues.
That's right.
It's the people that's just living there saying, I just want to live my life, son. I just want to be able to sit on my, how the grandmamas, baby, I just want to sit on my front porch, drink my tea or drink my lemonade and just relax. I don't want to hear gunshots. But the only way you're going to be able to get that is you got to go over there. You got to go and sit down with them when there's not a emergency, where they're not being called. It's the walking the communities. We can't even have walking beats anymore. We don't even have even personnel, but you can't. It's so difficult because I've had to protect my white officers that were with me when they be calling my white officers all kind of names. Like, no, you're not going to do that. I stop them right then and there. I say, I'm not going to let you disrespect him. I'm not going to let you disrespect her. Think because I'm black, then I'm going to let you talk about my white brother that's the police officer in any kind of way. No. But then after I introduce my white rookie or whatever that was with me at the time, and I got him to understand, then they started to accept him. But they were initially rejecting him or her because of what their experiences they've had with officers of the opposite race. So I know I kind of went all the way around about, but what I know you said you got the you don't like the buckshot approach, which you say is the community policing. You like targeted policing. Explain that. The difference that you feel between community policing and target policing, because maybe I misunderstood it.
Yeah, no, I would actually agree with everything you said. So when we say community, when we see the word policing, that's what I don't like. That community policing doesn't sound good. A lot of times it's symbolism without substance. It's like Big Brother's always looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we send law enforcement in all the time, what's law enforcement looking for? They're looking for criminal activity.
Correct.
If you go in, you're going to be finding criminal activity. And it might not really, I argue, even our system sometimes criminalizes poverty. It doesn't really criminalize real criminals, right? That's something that I struggle with. One, as a Christian man, because I believe in justice and mercy. Ultimately comes from the hand of God, but we're supposed to enact that too as the civil government. And what you don't want is Big Brother looking over your shoulder all the time. However, you have communities that are being run roughshod over by real criminals. And when I say community policing, as we know it doesn't work, it's because of the buckshot approach. You say, hey, this is a high drug area, and you get guys and gals to go in there, and they're stopping everything that drives by. Well, now the community says, hey, man, all y'all are targeting me because I'm black. Well, no, not really, but it feels that way. Scripture tells us to abstain from the appearance of evil. So my heart is, instead of targeting the community, target the criminal, target the crime, and build community partnerships. Community partnerships is what you're talking about when you talk about going to the events. The leaders in the community, whether they're church leaders, whether they're coaches,
pastors,
whoever it
coaches,
is.
yeah, that's a good one.
You get in, because you're talking about working out earlier. There's a lot of times in a community where, a boxing gym might be a place where kids go and hang out, where adults go and hang out. So you build partnerships with the community, with those leaders in the community, because it's different for Pleasant Grove. My wife's from Pleasant Grove, right? That's where her family's from. Pleasant Grove's different than Gardendale. You're over here, right? You're on the city council here. It's different than Gardendale, different than Hoover, different than Mountain Brook, different than Birmingham. So it's very difficult to pull a deputy or officer. Hey, a lot of them live in Shelby County, right? It's hard to pull somebody from another community and put them in place in wherever you're at, because sometimes what's acceptable in one community is not acceptable in another. So I don't like the idea of community policing. I like what you're saying is what I would call community partnerships.
Okay.
And I 100% agree that you have to have community partnerships.
Yeah.
But the purpose of law enforcement is to target criminal activity, eradicate criminal activity, and do it in an effective manner so the community looks and says, hey, no, I want y'all in here, because when they come to you, they're bringing you something real. Does that make sense? And so that's kind of my heart behind it. So community policing is a term that's been used, and I think it's been poached a lot. I don't like community policing because I hate the idea of getting in and Big Brother always looking over your shoulder and targeting a community.
So to clarify, it's not so much as community policing. You want to you taking that word out, is community partnerships.
Community partnerships.
Okay.
If you go on the website, our Jared Hudson for Sheriff.com website, you'll see the community partnerships, and I talk a little bit about it. But that's the biggest thing, is partnering with the community, because each community is different. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We have the general idea of protections of civil liberties, of constitutional rights, right? We have that general idea that we have to stand on. But community partnerships help us, once we eradicate crime from that community. Let's say we get Pleasant Grove. We'll talk about Pleasant Grove a little bit. let's say, hey, look, we don't have a lot of crime going on. We've dealt with, these violent crime warrants, this drug issue's been dealt with. Hey, we're good. You then help build safeguards in place through community partnerships so crime doesn't infiltrate that community again. And when it does, the community calls you and says, hey, sheriff or the police department, if they need help, partnerships with the local law enforcement, hey, we need help getting this out of here. So that's kind of my heart. The reason I like that, we'd take 20 dudes to a country overseas. We couldn't target the whole country. We wouldn't target the whole country or a whole region.
It'd be impossible.
It's impossible. We take 20 dudes and we go after one specific terrorist or a specific terrorist cell. That's what you have to do right now, especially with 278 deputies at the sheriff's office. We have limited resources. We have to use them effectively. We have to be good stewards with those resources. And the only way, in my opinion, to be a good steward is to target crime, not the community. Don't do a buckshot approach, do a very precise approach, and that's going to do two things for you. One, that's going to help you take limited resources and maximize their effectiveness. And number two, that's going to help build community partnerships that supersede the tenure of somebody who works that beat, like the old walking beat deputy, or even supersedes the tenure of me as the sheriff, because the agency has now built that partnership with the community as opposed to a specific individual. You just talked about that with you and, a white officer, you and maybe somebody in the community that's black. Instead of it being on an individual, now the agency has that partnership with the community. So that's kind of my heart. It supersedes any individual, and it goes, hopefully last for years down the road.
Yeah. And two more things. It piggybacks on what we're talking about. In my opinion, one of the best ways to equally address all of, the citizens within the area that you are elected in is to have a staff that represents that, because one thing that bothers me, and I have had other elected officials kind of point this out, to me, and as to why they do certain things when they're doing their ads. And I would say, man, why when I see certain ads, and I'm not talking about your ad, I'm talking about generally, when I see certain ads, I was like, well, why don't their ads represent like the community or the world? The world is so diverse. We have so many different people. But then I see like one group represented in multiple ads. And then I would have at least the candidate or even an elected official at that time state that, well, stats have proven that these are the people that vote. And I said, well, maybe the other people will vote if they felt like they were invited to the table. Were heard. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. You got to make them feel like their vote matters. You got to make them feel like they're welcome. Otherwise, they're definitely entitled to feel disenfranchised.
Oh yeah,
and feel left out. I mean, who wouldn't? And this goes in just even a little bit deeper. I took my daughter to go see Disney on Ice. I'm married. I got 3 kids. I got 1 baby girl. Love her to pieces.
My man. Yeah, 3 kids.
Girls are a something serious.
Oh, I know. I got 3 girls, bro.
Oh, my goodness.
Say to wear you out, bro.
So my baby girl, she asked me, and this was all on the news and stuff like this too, but my baby girl brought it up. This is the first time we had the conversation. And she said, and this was this past Sunday, she said, Daddy, she said, there's only one black princess. And that's
Tiana.
Tiana,
yeah.
And she said, well, Daddy, really, there's Ariel too. She said, it kind of, and it was an older white guy next to me. And I don't know what he was reacting to somebody beside him or whatever. And I said, oh, Lord, it's probably about to get interested if he's going to react to it. So, I let my daughter's 13 years old. So, I'm just letting her talk. But she didn't get a chance to talk too much because the show started back up. But beauty is defined a certain way in mainstream media, and girls are, in order for them to feel beautiful, and then I learned this when I had my daughter, it takes a dad, there
100%
be there to say, baby, you're beautiful. But when the world shows you otherwise, when the world shows like only one specific type of group, little girls start to question like, do I matter? Am I important?
Oh, yeah.
Am I beautiful? And that switches even on the political end.
Mm-hmm. Because
I make $25,000 a year. Am I not important? Because I'm indigent?
Yeah.
I don't have a degree. Am I important? And then the guy that's just got the portion, living in Mountain Brook or in a more affluent area feels the most important because he has the most access. And I've seen it at I'm not gonna name the department, but the department and the departments, to where the certain community members, especially more affluent members, will have access.
Have more access, yeah.
Oh my God, that trips me out. Like, why can't Miss Williams and Miss Johnson have the same access to the captain as CEO Joe? They're both they're both citizens. They're both equally important, but they don't treat them that way, and that burns me up. It's like, give them the same treatment. CEO Joe and Mrs. Williams deserve the same.
They get the
treatment.
same. They get the same shake. No, you're exactly right, and it's funny. It's funny you mention that, because that's one thing that again, in my idea that I struggle with this is, but it seems as if our system criminalizes poverty sometimes, and by that I mean a lot of times people who are impoverished, and Scripture tells us this. I use Scripture a lot again because I'm a Christian, but he says, you will not be mad at a man who's starving who steals bread. And so who's talking? He's asking God. He says, "So God, don't let me be so poor that I have to steal bread and dishonor your name, but don't let me be so well off that I hold myself up high and I forget that you're my God," right? So, but you won't be mad at anybody who steals bread to feed himself and his family, right? And oftentimes our system criminalizes that poverty because it's easy to go after. It's symbolism without substance is what I like to say. And that's kind of that buckshot approach as well. It's easy to go in and knock off somebody who's slinging dope and making, honestly, a business decision. As a businessman, I know you can appreciate this. I know as a businessman myself, if a kid can make $600 a day slinging dope on a street corner versus making $10 an hour working at McDonald's or cutting grass or whatever, and you don't have a man in his life or a woman in his life to let him know, hey, bro, this is an ethical decision. That's
positive role model.
You got to have that, which is ultimately why I believe God gave us the nuclear family.
Yeah.
Well, I don't believe that. I mean, that is why he gave us a nuclear family, is to raise up children to be productive members of society and make ethical decisions, not always business decisions. Hey, if he doesn't know it's an ethical decision, guess what? He's dumb for not making that. That's a true business decision in his mind. You've got to make sure you have role models, and again, those community partnerships help with that. Now, part of this having access, each and every person having access to the same services that CEO Joe has, or the grandmother who lives down in Hueytown, Alabama, right, just down the road from us.
In Silver Springs, just a little small little town.
Silver Springs, down the road from here. So having that access is vitally important, but it's twofold. It's one, on the leadership in that agency, to cultivate a culture, in my opinion, of Christian principles, but of principles that show no partiality. Everybody gets the same shake. It doesn't matter who they are, number one. But number two, to have the community itself needs to understand that, hey, when we call law enforcement, we need to have a real need. I'm going to give you a for instance. A buddy of mine works up at Huntsville Police Department. He's former Army. He's been up at Huntsville Police Department for a while. He got a call one day to go over to a house, and Dad's sitting in there, Mom's sitting there, and as a 5-year-old boy, she said, "Okay, there he is." He calls. He goes to the house. He thinks it's a domestic. It had to do with an unruly kid. He's like, "I'm thinking this is a teenager I'm going to have to deal with. This the mom is called in." The dad's sitting at the table. The kid is 5 years old, and the mom says, "Okay, there he is. Take him. He won't eat his green beans." He got a call. She made it seem like one thing. He shows up. Kid won't eat his green beans. He took the kid's dad and mom to the side and said, "When you call us here, when you call us, we are looking for criminal activity.
Yes.
And we will find it." That's the thing, is we will find criminal activity.
But don't call me to scare your kid.
Do not call me to scare your kid.
That burns me up.
And so
burns me
I think it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
When you call, make sure it's something worthy of a call.
Yeah.
So it's not the girl who cries wolf, right?
Correct.
And then on the back end, if you're in that position, if you're in a law enforcement position or you're in leadership in law enforcement, make sure that you show no partiality. Everybody gets the same shake, whether it's my mama or your mama or his mom. It doesn't matter. Everybody gets the same exact shake. And it starts off with respect until respect is not due, and then we have to deal with it appropriately. And I would argue the easiest way to deal with that and build that rapport with the community is going after the criminals that already exist. Going after the violent criminals, murder, rape, robbery, rape, all of those things. We got 1,500 plus warrants sitting down in the courthouse right now. Go after those. They're going to lead to other things anyway, but go after real criminals. These folks have criminalized somebody. Let's knock that rung of the ladder out before we move to the next rung of the ladder. And guess what? That community is going to say, they're going to see you working, and they're going to be like, hey, these guys they're here to help us out.
Yeah.
And it's going to start to rebuild that rapport. I don't know. So that's kind of a Southern Baptist pastor answer. I was dragging it out there.
I got one more. The last question. We're gonna do this question, then after that, we're gonna close you out with whatever else you want to say.
All right.
In Pleasant Grove, we had the big issue with the burglary suspect, the standoff. It stemmed from a residential burglary in which Pleasant Grove was able to keep the guy inside. He went into the house, barricaded himself. Jefferson County Sheriff's Office was requested. Vestavia assisted. We had Star One. Tell that story from your perspective, and just I want to give you that opportunity because, like I say, Pet was going to have the same opportunity to address it too. But I want you to address it from what was the information that you received, what could have been done better. In reality, I have to tell people this. We have to keep it. We have to keep it real.
That's right.
And the most real thing is resources, manpower. Still got other stuff. I got liability.
Yep.
I got to make sure that's covered. You know, if this happens, you know, that's when you wear that top hat.
That's right.
And you're that guy. That big old liability word, you know, that big L comes out.
Heavy as the crown.
Yes. That crown is heavy, man. And the responsibility is on you if there's any loss of life, if one of my guys get injured, if the community is in danger, making sure that we don't have fruits of the poisonous tree. People don't understand that, fruits of the poisonous tree. If I mess up this portion of this case, the whole case is over. It's done.
That's right, yeah.
Because I did not follow the law accordingly, and now the whole case is gone. Go ahead and explain that instance.
And this is more for me, an outsider looking in. I got text that day as it was happening from guys at Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. I got text that from buddies of mine that worked down there forever. I got text that day from Vestavia, some of the guys at Vestavia, buddy at Hueytown. That Hueytown came over. Somebody from Hueytown came over and at least showed up to help. So, and then wound up talking with the Pleasant Grove police chief not long, I think the day after. So me putting everything together, if I'm just being honest, it wasn't really an earth-shattering case. Did you have exigent circumstances or hot pursuit? Maybe. You might have. I think it depends on. I would have to be there to be able to say for sure, but some guys would say yes, right? It met the standard for hot pursuit or exigent circumstances. From what I understand, it probably met that. All right, so Pleasant Grove says, hey, we don't have the resources to be able to do this. We think this guy's armed and barricaded, whatever. He enters a house. There's nobody in this house. So now we start losing maybe some of those exigent circumstances if it's his own house. Correct. All right, so I'm fine with that.
We got him ID'd. We know who he is. We know where to stay.
He's in.
Can we just
house.
get the warrant and we'll get him?
So they get a search warrant. I've heard from 3 people who had the search warrant delivered that day that they had a search warrant. So from what I understand, they showed up with a search warrant. Like they had a search warrant. They presented it to Jeffco, and then they didn't go in. So I think from my end, from what I know,
now Vestavia didn't go in either because they called negotiation team. They called him out. And which is what we always try to do. I mean,
so surround and call out.
We do a surround and call out. Same thing our tech team does. SRT. If we can call them out, oh my God, if they can come out, then that's good.
That's a whole lot easier.
That's a whole lot easier. Then we can go ahead and clear it out. But nowadays we trying to make sure that we still got the beats covered. Yep. We got this domestic going on. We got a robbery going on. It's like, God, dog it. Like, But again, hindsight is always 20/20.
Hindsight's always 20/20, and I think the easiest thing, it's not an earth-shattering case. They had a search warrant.
Yeah.
Jeffco said, we're not going to make entry with the search warrant. I think Jeffco offered to leave negotiators. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
Somebody said that. But it's not an earth-shattering case. I mean, you got a search warrant. and really that's just relation. In my opinion, where the failure is relationship from sheriff's office to police department, and you've got to have a good relationship as the chief law enforcement officer with every municipality in your area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to disparage the current administration, nah. Disparage what Pleasant Grove and Vestavia and Hueytown, all these others did, no. I think it wasn't an earth-shattering case. They had a search warrant and call for Jeffco. Jeffco shows up, and then Jeffco leaves.
Because we even had Star One that day.
Okay, yeah. See, I didn't even know that Star One was up.
Star One was up.
So
because that's what got my attention. Anybody that's in police and know Star One when you see Star One. Star One is going to hover more than any other helicopter around over here.
I didn't realize Star One was up, but I think it's as simple as you got a search warrant. Then it's just on leadership to make a decision. Are we going to make entry on this search warrant or not? Jeffco decided that they weren't going to do it. I think where all the problems spun up is later on there was a back and forth, and you're on Pleasant Grove City Council, so you might know there was a back and forth between Pleasant Grove and the sheriff's office.
Correct.
I think that's really where a lot of the spin up was, because sheriff's office was saying, hey, they didn't have legal right to enter this residence. Pleasant Grove was like, no, we absolutely did. We had a search warrant.
Yeah.
And I know
then the community jumped in, and we got Facebook lawyers and Facebook police, and
that's right,
Facebook everything. They they think they know everything, and really they don't know hardly anything.
And I think that's probably the biggest problem with that one.
Yeah,
it's a relatively simple case. Put it on me. If I was a sheriff, or I was one making decision, we would have surrounded, tried to talk them out, and then ultimately make entry if we couldn't get them out.
Correct.
That's what I would have done. But again, hindsight's 20/20. I wasn't there, but
Correct.
Based off of what I understand, that's what I would have done, just because they had a search warrant, they had everything they needed, and I mean, you just need knowledge of a search. I mean, they had it in hand, but you just need knowledge of a search warrant for it to be, okay for you to make entry. Hey, this is what's being obtained. And then
you got to look at what has happened nationally with search warrants, and how people have lost their lives.
Yeah.
That were not the target at all, hitting the wrong house, and in my municipality, we did away with no-knock warrants. And as a matter of fact, our warrants, before we can go ahead and get a string, get the DA to go ahead and sign off on them, or judge sign off on them, we're good. Now it has to be presented to the chief. And on top of that, so it has to go through more channels now, and that's
not necessarily a bad thing.
That is not a bad thing. That's the entity trying to do its best to protect the citizens, the agency,
the people within the agency.
Yes,
a good case to think about. It's like the and not to go off on a rabbit trail, but like the Breonna Taylor case.
I was about to say the Taylor case.
Taylor case.
That's a great one.
Now, here's what ultimately happened. Now, and I remember listening to an interview with one of the officers there. He just showed up. And they're like, "Hey, you got to serve this warrant." I think it was a no-knock warrant they had for Breonna.
It was a no-knock warrant, yes.
And they wound up knocking and announcing. They get shot at through the door, right? But one of the guys now here's the other thing: if you do a no-knock warrant on a dude who's a known drug dealer, what else has he got going after him? He don't just have the police coming after him. He's got other gang members,
drug dealers coming after him.
Right?
Yeah. You got other ops coming at him for real.
He might not know he's shooting at the police.
Yeah.
He might be. And I say all that to say that Breonna Taylor case was one that you had a judge, you had a district attorney, you had a lot of other people in the system that should have been held liable.
Correct.
That weren't, but it ultimately fell down on that bottom level officer. But you know what they got in trouble for? And Breonna Taylor was shot, which is terrible, right? That's terrible. She lost her life. Her family got a settlement, I think,
correct,
right, and all that. But
no settlement's going to bring back life.
No settlement's going to bring your little girl back, right? She lost her life, but the officers didn't get in trouble for shooting her by accident. What did they get in trouble for? Reckless endangerment of the community around them. So I think even with this, because they were just firing their gun down the hallway without looking down the side. So without getting into all of that, I think it's the same thing with this. When I sit and look at it, when I sit and look at a search warrant as a leader, especially, right? When I sit and look at a search warrant, when I sit and look at a just violent felony warrant, whatever, what is the liability, one, to the community around me? If we execute this, if we wait on this, if we just leave and let this go, what is the liability to the community, number one? And then number two, what is the liability to the agency and the men and women of my agency if I call them to go out and do that? And that's what a good leader does. He looks at both of those things, especially when you're talking about law enforcement, because now you got a guy who's armed. Or not armed, but burglary, right? I think he robbed a house or a gun store, stole the guns.
Yeah. You talking about the Pleasant Grove incident? It was burglary. Well, when there's a weapon, it goes up.
It goes up. That's right.
Burglary too. So it was no longer burglary third. However, it was still it was still a property crime.
It was a property crime.
Correct.
So you have a burglary that took place. Now the question is, hey, is this guy, all right, he's in his own house. Is he a suspect at large? Do we surround and call him out?
He didn't kidnap anybody and then like that. And that's what I try my best to relate to citizens privately without jumping on social media, because that's like jumping down a rabbit hole.
You have to look at every one
nowhere.
of those things. Now, the last thing, too, is you have, and this is why property is important, the right to life is the most important thing.
Correct.
That is the most important
Top
thing.
priority.
Your right to life. The next thing is property. The reason property is important, John Locke, you can go all the way back to 1700, but John Locke says your property is the outward expression of your right to life and liberty. So your vehicle, your home, your stuff, that is your outward expression of your right to life and liberty. So if you can't have property, then you really don't have life and liberty.
Quality of life.
And so that's kind of you can't mix those two, because life is most certainly the most important. Liberty falls behind it. And then you got some people say, like, give me liberty or give me death, right? They want give me liberty or I don't want to live. All right, so that's fine. That's why they say life and liberty. But then property is that close second, and that's why you really have to sit and you have to look at what's our risk to life and liberty for this piece of property, because somebody lost their property and that's their outward expression of life and liberty. So you have to look at it, at the whole thing. And again, you can sit here in armchair quarterback situations all day long and we'll find a million different answers that are better. I do agree with you on, and this is going to piss a lot of people off probably in our community, but I do agree with you on no-knock warrants. It pissed a buddy of mine off with a marshal service. Said, oh, no, you do no-knock warrants all the time overseas in the SEAL teams. I said, we ain't overseas. We ain't overseas.
We in the States.
Because if you accidentally no-knock warrant my house, guess what's happening? I see dudes with guns in my house.
Oh yeah,
we're shooting them up.
We shooting them up. I'm going downstairs and getting the AR. I got guns on every floor in the house, and I got guns in every vehicle that I drive. So I'm armed at all times.
And see, that happens. That's what people. There's no.
And that's just due to my background with law enforcement. Right. I don't know who I may have crossed.
That's right.
They may have gotten out of prison. I've been in law enforcement for 16 years. Who said a guy I sent in prison 10 years ago just got released and ain't coming back to get me?
That's right. So so that's where you definitely have to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Because it's a danger to the citizen if you get it wrong. If they get it wrong on the warrant, or hey, we got the wrong guy, which happens.
And errors happen.
Errors happen. Number one, the citizen, but also even number one, I mean, this is not any less, but the deputy or the officer or whoever's serving that warrant, because now they're doing the wrong thing and they don't even realize it. And so it doesn't live.
They're following orders.
They're following orders, and they're following their protocols. If they're doing the right thing, now this guy's shooting at them. Well, now they can shoot back and they kill this guy who shot at him. And in reality, oh crap, we messed up. That happened in I think it was L.A. County Sheriff's Office a couple years ago, a while back. They hit the wrong house. And it was a Marine that was in there, and he lay down on his floor. His family's in the back room hiding. He just saw guys with guns in his house, and he shot at him. I think he shot one of the deputies, and they shot and killed him. I'll try to. You could probably look that story up still. But it was.
He's not the only story. It's several of them.
It happens. It happens all over. So it's
yeah.
That is something that we have to be cognizant of, especially nowadays, especially in today's time when the rhetoric against law enforcement is nationally at an all-time low, number one. But number two, when you've got so many guys that when everybody's living so close together, that mistake is more easily made. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not like you have, we all live out in the middle of nowhere, West Jefferson, where you have big blocks of property.
Yeah.
All these houses are side by side. It's very easy to get an address wrong. So that's dangerous to me.
And I'll say this last as it relates to no-knock warrants. It would be some others, that may state that, well, no-knock warrants are good because, we're going to lose. We got to preserve the evidence. It's ways to actually make sure you preserve the evidence. When you got your surveillance team, okay? When you got your surveillance team that's And you know, when we do surveillance, we do it for a large amount of the time when we're playing cars. We got guys that look like they work for AT&T. They got the hat and everything. When we do surveillance, we know when the house is occupied and when it's not. If we're trying to really make sure evidence is there, there's ways that we can do it where we make sure the house is the least time where it's occupied, where we decrease the number of occupants inside that dwelling. Or we able to stun them, which is why a lot of warrants are served at 0530 and 0600.
Mm-hmm.
We can startle them. They sound asleep. Boom! And we in there. And they don't know what they think they're dreaming. So it's ways to do that. You got to weigh the pros and the cons. And I live by these 2 E's. You know, when you're doing your job, you got to maintain the 2 E's. I say you got to be efficient and you got to be effective.
That's exactly
and what you're doing. You got to maximize all levels of efficiency in order to be ultimately effective. Otherwise, you're just pissing in the wind.
Well, and a lot of guys get upset at this too. And now I know that attorneys say this a lot, but I would rather a bad guy get away than to snatch up or kill or harm a good guy.
The innocent one.
Somebody who's innocent. When I say
we'll get the bad guy another day.
We'll get the bad guy later.
We'll get him.
I would rather that happen than somebody innocent lose their life or get arrested or whatever it is. And so to me, is the juice worth the squeeze? That's the biggest question.
This is a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right.
We got I teach my rookies that all the time. Man, we can get that guy.
Yeah.
You know, we got flock cameras.
We got all kinds of stuff.
We got so much
tech on the way over here.
We hitting flock cameras. We hitting Alabama power cams. We hitting all kind of cams. When we get the alerts, we will get you. I mean, what we're doing to offset manpower, we're utilizing technology, and that's what technology is going to really step in and help us out. But anyway, in closing, I want you to give you the opportunity to tell folks, you know, some things in closing that you want to you know that are of significance to you, and you want the people to know as we prepare for the election. It's going to be on November the 8th, and not only that, I want to no matter what direction this election goes, I do wish you the best. I really mean that. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, who's running. You know, I believe that what's meant for you is meant for you. You know, that what God has set for you, that no man can take away.
That's right.
If it's meant for you to win, guess where you're gonna win. If it's meant for Petway to win, Petway gonna win.
Right. That's exactly right.
Your life is gonna continue.
That's right.
So it's Petway's life. Their lives are gonna continue. But I do a mentoring program, and that represents that guy that's over there with that tie on over there on the left side of that Dunn it all show. My mentoring program is called Ties to Success. It's TIES, the number 2 success. It's where we go into different schools. I've been in the Boys and Girls Club. I've been in different youth groups, different churches, and the target population are boys, grades 7 through 12. We teach them how to tie a tie, but we teach them the elements that's tied to success. Everybody's not afforded the same opportunity. Having a dual parent household. The list just kind of goes on. There's things that they experience. And that's where I try to come in to fill the gap. Not only me, but my team. And I started that because of what I've seen in the streets for the past 16 years. So I say that to get to this. No matter what direction this election goes in, eventually at some point I will be reaching back out to you.
Oh, man, I appreciate
to check your schedule and to see, you know, if you can come in, because we're mentoring to boys, black, white, and Hispanic. Now, the demographics of those that's in this metro area, majority of them are black. Mm-hmm. But if there's a white one in there, Hispanic in there, a little Asian, we talking to everybody, you know, because all of them got some issue, whether it's social media, bullying, drugs in the house, the list kind of goes on.
That's right.
There is not one child that we've been in the presence of that we have not been able to create some type of positive effect. So, but I will begin with you in the future. But anyway, I want you to close out just to tell people, you know, what you want them to know as we approach the election on November the 8th.
No, I appreciate it, man. I think that's great what you're doing, what you're talking about. Ties to success. Is that what you said? Yeah, that's top notch, man. But yeah, so my name's Jared Hudson. You go to jaredhudsonforsheriff.com, find out more about me, look us up on Facebook and all that. Don't believe everything that you hear out there. You know, it's as you said, political season gets bad. You know, I was honorably discharged from the military, serve as a law enforcement officer, still serve as a law enforcement officer. I have a business. I have a master's of business administration. I want to bring my experience from the SEAL teams and my experience from business and my degree in business into the sheriff's office to make it more effective and provide a better service for Jefferson County as a whole. The primary thing, if you don't know Jesus, I ask you to ask him to reveal himself to you. I promise you he will, and you'll have the same option Pilate did. Accept him for the Savior or deny him and say, I'm innocent in this man's blood. So ask Jesus to reveal himself to you, and he definitely will. And if you have any questions on that, reach out to us on the website, man. Just shoot us a message and say, hey, I heard Jared talking about Jesus Day. I want to hear
tell them that website again, Jared.
JaredHudsonForSheriff.com. And then you can go like Facebook, Instagram. We got videos up. We got a little podcast for the sheriff's campaigns you can listen to. So just check us out on any of those platforms. And on November the 8th, get out and vote. This is not a Republican or Democrat thing. This is not a black and white Hispanic thing. This is we're in Jefferson County. We're raising our kids here together. This is who is the best man for the job. And seek the Lord's face. Read about me, read about us, get out and vote your values. I think that my values will align with most people in Jefferson County. And again, I look forward to being your sheriff.
All right, everybody, you heard it from Jefferson County Sheriff's candidate, Mr. Jared Hudson. So make sure you guys go and vote, whatever direction you vote in on November the 8th. No matter you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, please go out and vote. Let your voices be heard, because if you want to complain later and you didn't vote, guess what? I'm not going to listen to you, and I'm not really going to care. I'll let you know that in your face. Get out my face because you didn't vote. All right? So November the 8th is going to be the date on next week, too. So we're going to have Jefferson County Sheriff Petway is going to be on here, and we're going to go through the same set of questions for the most part. And if y'all got any questions, hit us up in the comments, but make sure you reach out to these candidates. If you got any specific questions that were not covered and you want to hear from them, just reach out to them. I can be frank and honest that Jared's campaign team was very responsive with reaching back out, and we greatly appreciate it. And that means a lot to me, and it goes a long way. So keep all those things there in mind as we move forward, and vote, for your favorite candidate. But please do your research along the way and choose the person that represents your values, your family, your community, and all of the above that makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, you check the box. Not your neighbor, not your friend, not your mama, not your cousin. Until next time, we thank you guys for tuning in to the Done It All Show. Be blessed, be merry, and do the best you can. Done It All. Love you guys.